What does Lamar Jackson's injury mean for the Ravens in the playoffs and beyond? Is there a sleeper that you may want on your team from the Miami Dolphins in the world-famous FFPC Playoff Challenge? And who are the picks to win in the FFPC world-famous FFPC Challenge from myself, from Farrell, and from tonight's guest, the 10th place finisher in the world-famous FFPC Playoff Challenge from last year, Dan Setlock, joins us to discuss how he came so close to winning the $500,000, how he plans on making some changes to get him to the mountaintop this year, and much more. We've got a great show for you. Farrell Elliott is here. I'm Eric Balkman. Stick around. Your high-stakes fantasy football hour starts now.
Under pressure, I've seen greater men than need a lesson.
Broadcast live and heard around the world, you are now watching the most entertaining hour of radio on the planet. Welcome to the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour presented by MyFFPC.com with your hosts Eric Balkman and Farrell Elliott. The High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour is your home for analysis from the best players in the world. And now, because no one else was available, here are Eric Balkman and Farrell Elliott.
Solace in the scripture, are we not all our father's sons? I became a man, nobody ever told me what a man was.
Thank you, Rob. Greetings and salutations to all of you Balkaholics and Farrelliacs. Welcome to the latest episode of the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour presented by MyFFPC.com. I'm your slightly above average host, Eric Balkman. My co-host is the definitive commissioner of fantasy football, Farrell Elliott. Coming up on tonight's show, I'll dole out a world famous FFPC playoff challenge roster for Farrell to pick apart, and the 10th place finisher in last year's world famous FFPC playoff challenge, Dan Setlock, is going to drop by to give you some of his tips and tricks to making sure you can lock in your best shot at a roster that's going to win you $500,000 either tonight or tomorrow before the contest locks. Speaking of said contest, you can play for a $500,000 grand prize right now in the world famous FFPC playoff challenge. Make sure you're registering for that at myffpc.com. Pretty simple format. You pick 12 players. You can only pick one player per NFL team. Now, we know there's 14 teams in the playoffs, which means you're not picking two players because you're going to submit a 12-person lineup. 4 flexes. It's the normal FFPC lineup, but you get the 2 extra bonus flexes. So you want to play 6 running backs, you want to play 6 receivers, 5 tight ends, whatever you want to do. You can do that with this playoff challenge. There's no roster management. There's no draft. There's no salary cap. You can actually register, sign up, and place your enter your roster in minutes. It's that simple. Did a little bit ago. I think it's like 90% full, something like that, right around 90% full. So make sure if you are going to get in that, you get in it right now. In fact, and rather than me just make this stuff up, why don't we just actually look at what it's at right now? So you are looking at, well over 90% full in the Football Guys Playoff Challenge. The FFPC Playoff Challenge, I think, is approaching just over 80% full right now, which actually is ahead of last year. And remember, it sold out a couple hours before kickoff of that first game last year. So there is no time like the present. Register now, myffpc.com, for the world-famous FFPC Playoff Challenge. Now, in case you missed it, we had the RotoViz High Stakes Lowdown on Tuesday night with 2022 FFPC main event 9th place team owner Rob Lankowski. We talked about how he finished in the top 10 of the FFPC main event in back-to-back years. We also touched on, for the last portion of the interview, last 20 minutes or so, we talked about his strategy and his advice and the stuff he's going to be doing when he crafts his lineups together in the playoff challenge. So if you're looking for more advice there, you can definitely check that out. If you checked out the FFPC mailers this week, you have seen a ton of content that is being produced around the industry based on this challenge. There's advice from Football Guys in there. There's advice from Draft Sharks in there. Advice from Fantasy Alarm. Fantasy Points. You can check out, we had Dan Williamson on from the GOAT District. They had a great podcast that they put out with John Daigle from 4 for 4, where they constructed an FFPC playoff challenge lineup. So the content is out there. There's no excuse for you to not know what you're doing and not putting in a really competitive lineup when you're getting from all the experts. So again, myffpc.com is where to go for that. Remember to like this video, subscribe to the channel, comment on the video, share the video, and get notified so you can make sure that we are producing the best possible content for you every single week. The more action we get on YouTube, the more content we can put out, like what we saw earlier, just a couple hours ago on this YouTube channel with Aiden LaCorey and Dave Terpoli giving you their FFPC Playoff Challenge preview, as well as the Football Guys Playoff Challenge preview. If you missed it, you can watch it on the YouTube channel here back. No problems whatsoever. See the live stream that those guys put out again a couple hours ago. Without further ado, let's bring in the commish right now, the definitive commissioner of fantasy football. Check out his competition, kffsc.com, at kffsc official on Twitter. The incomparable Farrell Elliott. Farrell, happy NFL playoffs weekend to you, man.
What a great introduction. Incomparable. Thank you, Balky. And yeah, it is. Isn't this wonderful? All the way into Monday night. Who's broadcasting Monday night's matchup, by the way?
Yeah, I would assume it's going to be the Joe Buck Troy Aikman tandem.
Oh, really? Okay. Well, beggars can't be choosers.
I'm looking it up right now.
Guys from RotoViz might be doing that too.
That would have been tremendous.
Our listeners are now leaving to go check out the recording of you and Terp and the boys. It's just you and me, brother.
I am looking at it right now. It is an 8:15 game, and it's on ESPN. So I'm assuming it's Joe Buck.
Okay,
and I'm assuming it's Troy Aikman. So there you go.
Take
on
what
that.
you can get.
Exactly. All right, let's get into it. We had some late breaking news here with not late breaking news, but breaking news that's going to affect teams in the playoff challenge. Mike Williams for the Los Angeles Chargers has been ruled out for the wild card round, and according to Fernando Ramirez, who reported this, sounds like he could be out longer than that. In fact, if the Chargers don't make the Super Bowl, you are probably going to you probably have seen the last of Mike Williams this season. He got hurt in that Week 18 game against Denver. Why he was out there, I'm not really sure, but he hasn't practiced all week. Tom Pelissero reported about in Williams back that is going to keep him out not only this week but multiple weeks. Now, Mike Williams had a team-leading 33% air yard share during the regular season. Justin Herbert's deep threat is gone now. He's going to have to rely on Austin Eckler, Gerald Everett, Keenan Allen. You could see more of like a more methodical passing game where they're just playing for the sticks to be moving rather than going for the big play. And I think these are questions we have to answer, Farrell. As you look at this competition, the Chargers team, as you look at this from a competitive standpoint in the FFPC Playoff Challenge, does Eckler, Herbert, Everett, Allen, any of these guys, who looks most appealing from the Chargers for you right now?
Allen gets a bump. There are other receivers that could draw coverages away from him. Palmer and Carter, while are good downfield wide receivers, but they don't provide the target that is provided by Mike Williams. And it's just so foolish that this elite player is not part of the playoffs. This team really confuses me. The coach says he has no regrets about who he put onto the field. And I would think the coach is subject to some awareness issues. He just doesn't quite understand the business of football. He proved that last year with his misplay at the end of the game that encouraged the Raiders to kick what I believe was a field goal to win the game, when a tie would have let the Chargers participate in the playoffs last year. And I got to figure his players are consistently giving him the side eye in the locker room. I don't think it speaks well for this team going into the road game against Jacksonville. But I'm if you've got to use a Charger, I think the Charger everyone wants to use is Eckler. Keenan Allen is Jacksonville is sorrowful against the slot receiver, and if Allen fulfills the slot role in this offense, that's hard to predict. So Balky, yeah, I'm just flummoxed by this entire team, and I expect Jacksonville to move on from this game.
And okay, so if that's the case, then if you expect Jacksonville to move on, then maybe you're looking at the Chargers defense or some like a fade type, and rather than Eckler is going to be heavily owned. Keenan Allen, who's probably going to be heavily owned now with this Mike Williams news. Is that the way you approach this, rather than soak a running back position or a flex position into a guy who may only get one game? Do you roll with a defense or something instead?
We have multiple teams that are only going to get one game, so Eckler can give you production of 2 games in one. Las Vegas has installed him as a I looked it up earlier, minus 45 to catch over, or the over and under is 4.5 catches. You've got minus money for over that. I think he'll have that middle of the second quarter. So if anyone wants to make a bet, there you go. But Eckler, one and done or two and done. Eckler might give you 2 games worth of productivity.
47.5 is the total on that game. Chargers are 2.5-point favorites in that. So should be a lot of scoring. I think that is the second highest total of Wild Card Weekend. I believe that's accurate. Yeah. The one that is the only one that's higher is the 48.5 that we have in the Giants Vikings game. All right. So let's get into this Lamar Jackson thing. So he actually announced publicly via his Twitter account that there's still inflammation surrounding his knee and it remains unstable. He says he wishes he could be out there, but he can't give 100% of himself to his teammates and his fans. So it doesn't sound like John Harbaugh, the Ravens, had much of a say in this. It sounded like Lamar Jackson said, look, I'm not playing. Jackson said that he has a grade 2 PCL sprain, borderline of grade 3, and the fact that his knee is not stable makes it sound like he could be done for the year. Farrell, this is a player that the Ravens and him tried to get together in the offseason to come together on a long-term deal. It didn't happen. We know that Jackson is probably not going to factor into the world-famous FFPC playoff challenge. But what is the future like for Jackson in Baltimore? Is this a marriage that can be repaired where they can come together on a long-term deal still?
Well, we don't really know because he does not have the elements and assets in place to come to a long-term deal. And the Ravens have the benefit of the collective bargaining agreement, which will allow them to keep him as a player and keep him on the field. And he has negotiated himself into this, and it because of his lack of retaining some assistance to get to a deal. Getting to a deal for a star player shouldn't be this hard. In regards to Lamar announcing that he's not going to play, that's something that should be handled by the team and their media people. I don't understand why that isn't. There's been a lot of talk that this knee is contract related, and I think that's very unfair for Lamar. If he's showing up, taking therapy, trying to get himself together to play, he's doing all he can do to try to get on the field. I think the team ought to step up and say, Lamar's here, but Lamar's not ready. I think this gives tremendous opportunities for Baltimore to just see what they have. Anthony Brown, it looks like he's going to be the man that's tapped for this. He struggled last time against Cincinnati, but I was impressed with this player at Oregon. I thought he did well, and I think that as an undrafted free agent, he went out in a challenge and did about as well as he could. It was not attractive. 2 interceptions, no touchdowns, less than 50% of his passes. But he'll do better this time. He won't challenge the Bengals, but I think there's many quarterbacks that get an opportunity to show what they can do, and they mature greatly and step up to the challenge that is presented them. He's going to do better than what we probably saw last time. It's not going to be enough to derail the Bengals, but it may do something for his career as a backup quarterback, and more importantly, it may rush Lamar to try to come to some type of decision with the Ravens. I doubt that the Ravens want to underpay Lamar. Perhaps Lamar has some type of idea that's not realistic on what he should get paid.
And that could be. And we don't know. We don't know what's going on in those conversations, as you pointed out as well. Getting back to this Dolphins-Bills game, and we'll talk about this with our guest, Dan Setlock, who's coming up in just a couple of minutes, 10th place finisher in the world-famous FFPC playoff challenge last year. But this Dolphins thing, Raheem Mostert is officially ruled out from the wild card matchup against the Bills. Mostert did not practice all week, so now it will be the Jeff Wilson show. Now, Jeff Wilson, was added, as we all know, via trade at the trade deadline to play for Mike McDaniel, who, like Mostert, played under McDaniel in San Francisco. Now, Wilson is a guy that took the backfield over for Mostert. Like, Mostert was really controlling it, even when he was, in this timeshare with Edmonds. Mostert was running that backfield. And he played in 16 games this year, too, which we don't normally see from Mostert. Now, Wilson came over. He took over that backfield. Dolphins are looking like they're one and done. It's Skylar Thompson. Is there a pivot if you're entering multiple entries into this contest? Is there room on one of your rosters for Jeff Wilson just to see what he can do in that Bills offense, and knowing that he's probably not sharing that backfield with anybody significant?
Yeah, well, Ahmed is a good player, and Ahmed could end up splitting time with him. So I think no. I think a lot of the people will be fading Tyreek Hill here. This game doesn't. His body looks a little beat up. We hear the injury reports and guys are going to miss time. What we do not hear is how many guys are struggling physically. You don't necessarily see it in their movement, but if you had real close seats to the field, you could see it in their expressions. You could see it how they're trying to warm up. They're coming out to get extra time. So I really don't know what I want to do with the Dolphins here. I would think that that's your defense kicker play, perhaps. It's exciting to look at this roster and say, I can get performance on a team that tries to catch up. And then you look at Skylar Thompson and what he has to be facing on the road against this team, a team that is playing not only skilled NFL football, but at a superior emotional level to a lot of other NFL teams. So, I doubt if they I doubt if any Dolphin has a standout day offensively. Defensively, they'll play well for a while against Buffalo, but Buffalo will wear them down. And if that doesn't happen, I'll say, what in the Krautwurst is going on here?
Well, let's talk to a guy who should know what's going on, or at least we think he should know what he's going. We think
he should. He will.
He should know what he's going on.
I think he will know what's going on.
I know, exactly. And I want to bring him in right now. The reason I say he should know what's going on is because he's been playing fantasy football since the early 90s. He has a home league with it has 20 players, including a guy who's been on this program before, albeit just for a brief interview with Pros vs. Joes and Chris Prince. He's basically been playing with the same crew for the last 25 years. He began playing high stakes in 2007, made it to the final 10 in the Fantasy Football Open Championship for that $1 million back in 2010, finished 7th in that contest. He's been playing with the FFPC for the last half decade, usually 2 main events and 10 football guys and a ton of best balls a year. He finished 10th in the world famous FFPC playoff challenge this past year. Please welcome into the program, Mr. Dan Setlock. Dan, welcome in tonight, man.
Hey guys, how are you?
We're doing good. We're doing great. The real question is, are you done tinkering with your playoff challenge entries this year yet?
I am. I probably am going to add a late one tomorrow morning. I have a feeling, but I'm kind of one of those people that just sets it and I don't tinker much. I try not to, because when I tinker, it doesn't usually end up well. So I'm usually a set it and forget it kind of person.
We set it and forget it, Balky. His name is Setlock. Exactly. This is the greatest name.
Right.
There are so many things.
Yeah.
There's so many marketing angles here. So many things you could do with this. We must get you in some representation.
Yeah, it's like Jenga though. Once you move one piece in this, this format, it's like you got to move 7 other pieces. So I don't like to do that. I want to set it and leave it.
Right.
Lock it up. Lock it up.
And take this for everybody who's watching this right now. You're talking with the 10th place team in the playoff challenge last year. He sets it, and rather than tinkers with it, he gets another team. Gets another team if he wants to modify something. So that's the way you play it. You don't mess with what you already got.
No,
you want to do something different.
I set one of my real favorite teams, and then add a second just to kind of tinker with that one a little bit, just in case. But generally, it's the first one that does the best. Usually,
there you go.
In my history, at least.
And I think that's true with a lot of people, although I don't know it's true with everybody, especially if you get an additional team. Sometimes you get better at it as you go. It doesn't always work that way, but sometimes it does. Dan, let's talk about this for a second. When you're not finishing in the top 10 of the world famous FFPC playoff challenge, what are you doing for a living, sir?
I am a finance manager at a car dealership in Taylor, Michigan, Moran Buick GMC. Yeah, great gig. Work no weekends. We have Saturdays off, so a lot of football watching.
You have Saturdays off in the
Yeah.
car business?
Yeah, isn't that amazing? I found a
love
place
it.
that doesn't open on Saturdays, so
Good for you.
yeah,
That's
been in the
really-
business for about 6 years. That's definitely not always the case, but our owner does not believe in working on the weekends, so takes care of us.
Good.
Yeah.
Good to hear.
Setlock has the weekend off. That
I
it
got the
gives you more
weekend off.
time to tamper
I do.
with your lineup, but you do not do it because you said
I have a wife and 3 children, so I'm plenty busy with other stuff.
Congratulations,
So. Yeah.
sir. Okay, Mr. Setlock. I looked at your roster that you did so well with last year, and I must temper this with I've never experienced much success in this format. I'm intrigued by it. I love playing in it.
Yeah.
When I look at a winning team, a successful team, I say, well, I could have done that. Or I say, I actually had that. Maybe, excuse me, gentlemen, maybe I didn't set and lock it. So I want to quickly go through your roster from last year. I'm going to run all the way through it. And I want to know if just give me some element of what the strategy and how you utilized it and what your philosophy was in putting this team together. Because it looks like a team that anyone could have put together. Your chalk players, quarterback Patrick Mahomes, Cooper Kupp, Devontae Adams, Rob Gronkowski, and Stephon Diggs. Those guys, the easiest picks in all the draft. Then Joe Mixon, Damian Harris at running back. That makes sense. Deebo Samuel was on his way to a great end of the season. Every team needs a Raider. You had Hunter Renfrow. You added a flex, and you went with Zach Ertz from Arizona, Bullock and the Cowboys at kicker and defense. What was the hardest decision? Because I can see all the easy decisions. So what was the hardest decision, and did you make any changes to this? And how did you end up with this team?
Well, let me preface this by saying it's hard to remember yesterday, let alone last year.
Yeah, I understand.
Well,
Let me tell you, if I finished in 10th place, if I can't remember it, I'm going to come up with a damn good story.
Yeah.
And,
it's funny because I looked at this team today when Eric sent it to me, and I'm like, I really had Hunter Renfrow on this team. I do not remember that. But I mean, the key for the way I do it, honestly, is I pretty much map out the playoffs, right? I map out who's going to win the matchups. First of all, who's going to make it to the Super Bowl down the list. I want my quarterback from the team that I think is going to make the Super Bowl. Obviously, that wasn't the case last year with Mahomes. However, he did have a great, playoff run. But I mean, and I just work my way back. I mean, if it's a debate, I mean, a lot of these guys are generally chalk, which I don't think is always the worst thing, honestly, in this contest. No. I mean, you got to differentiate a little bit, but ultimately you're trying to get the best player from each team that's going to score the most points, right? It doesn't really matter if it's chalk or not, honestly. I mean, you got to have a few things go your way, but honestly, looking at my team, a couple of keys obviously were Deebo. I mean, I think Deebo was a key. He had a great run. Cooper Kupp, obviously, but Mixon was a key. Mixon had a great playoff run. I think a lot of people had Chase. And other than that, I mean, Diggs was great. But yeah, honestly, I don't remember my mindset of going through the team. That's just my general philosophy.
Having someone here in Cincinnati, the chalk pick was Chase, and you went away from it.
Yeah, and I went away from it because I just thought that I didn't honestly think the Bengals were going to make it as far as they did, but I figured I believe they had a good rushing matchup the first week. I kind of break it down like matchups in the regular season. Who's playing this game? Okay, if they advance, what's the rushing D like? Things like that. But no, I didn't have the Bengals going to the Super Bowl. I can tell you that, obviously. But
well, you could have told us you did.
So let's talk about this year, Dan, and I think one of the games that people are really going to have to get right, and it might be the toughest game to project, is the Cowboys and Buccaneers. I think the Cowboys are a slight favorite in that game in Tampa on Monday night. 2.5 right now as I'm seeing it. But the crucial, what makes this game so interesting is besides it being, close to a coin flip, there are a plethora of players on both rosters that you can use. And maybe you pick one player from both teams on this. But when you have Prescott, Pollard, Elliott, Lamb, you got Dalton Schultz there as well from Dallas. You look at Tampa, and you have Evans and Godwin. You got Fournette, Rashad White, Tom Brady. Cade Otton has been coming on as well. I mean, there's a lot of different ways to go. Who do you think wins that game? And who are you picking from these teams in your challenge roster?
It's funny because I think this is a lock. I love the Bucs in this game. I don't think it's much of a question personally. I don't see how they're underdogs, honestly. I'm from Michigan. Obviously, Brady's a Michigan alum. So, I mean, I've been a Brady fan my whole life. I don't think they're not playing well, not having a great season, but I love the Bucs in this game. I think it's the easiest game on the board almost, personally, betting wise. So I'm completely fading the Cowboys. I'm right now. I have them slotted in at the defense, and I've toyed with the idea. Actually, I have a $35. I think it's the football guys. I got Brady in the QB slot. I think they legit have a chance to go back to the Super Bowl. I'm gonna go on record in saying that. I think the path is honestly not that crazy. I mean, you got Philly with the banged up Hurts. You got Brock Purdy, who's never started a playoff game in his life, as the two favorites. I mean, you got Brady, got to be licking his chops. He wins this game, and I mean, they could have Minnesota next, possibly. I don't think that strong. So yeah, I think the Bucs are moving on in this game pretty easily. I mean, not that they're going to blow them out, but I think they're winning this game. So I'm leaning right now Mike Evans. I think Mike Evans is going to have a big game, but I could see Fournette. But I'm thinking Mike Evans. But if I had a little more, I don't know, I don't want to say the word, but I'd probably go Brady. I could see Brady making it.
Yeah, and I'll tell you this too. Like, and I've been saying this since the playoffs locked. Even before the playoff bracket was locked, anybody can win it in the NFC. Yeah. I mean, Philly's obviously the 1 seed. San Francisco is hot right now. I mean, they've won a bajillion games in a row. Sure. Minnesota obviously has the firepower to hang with anybody. And then you look at Tom Brady and obviously Dallas. We'll see with them, but yeah, I mean, it's wide open.
Playoff Tom, come on.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, and maybe Lombardi Lenny as well. We'll see.
And you're right. And Lenny's another one. I mean, I think it's just falling in the right place for them, and they're getting healthy. They got all their weapons healthy for the most part. I mean, their line's still banged up, but I mean, I think they get through this game. They don't have the hardest path to get back to the Super Bowl. I mean, Brady's done it with lesser teams, so it wouldn't shock me.
There are 3 intriguing underdogs in this weekend's matchup. Jacksonville being the other that I pick as a winner.
I like them too.
Tampa that I haven't decided on. And then the New York Giants that it seems like all the East Coast media is behind, but I think for good reason. Could you see those 3 underdogs advancing?
I do. Well, it's obviously Tampa. I love. I do like Jacksonville a lot.
Right.
I'm leaning ETN in that matchup. I think once again, he's probably going to be the chalk on that team unless you fade him and you go with the defense. But I don't know if you can play. I mean, I guess you can play Kirk, but I think ETN's the play there. I do see them winning that game. And the Giant game is the tough one for me. I mean, I could see the Giants winning that game. Mm-hmm. I am playing Barkley most likely. I mean, I think that's going to be probably the chalkiest of the chalk.
How important – I see a lot of your decisions revolving around what the quarterback can do with the team. That has me fading the Cowboys because if you watch Prescott – over the last few weeks, his receivers are getting open, and I don't know why he's not throwing the ball. I know with his experience, he's seeing them, so I think something physically could be wrong. He says, I can't complete that pass. I can't throw the post pattern. I can't get the ball to him. That's just my hunch. But how important is it to have in your final week one of the Super Bowl quarterbacks? Is that a key to success in these contests?
I think it is, but I didn't have it last year, and I still made top 10. I don't know exactly if the guy in the.
Well, yeah, but I mean, we want you to win, Setlock. Come on.
I think honestly, you probably do. I mean, I think the Bills are getting there. I got Josh Allen at the quarterback. I mean,
Fair
I think
enough.
The Bills are winning it. If I didn't think the Bills are winning, I wouldn't have Josh Allen. But I think that's, again, going to be – see, the quarterback's going to be a weird one. I mean, you can't really say any quarterback's going to be chalk. You're going to have people that back Mahomes. You're going to have people that have Hurts. You're going to have all kinds of – so I don't think Allen's going to be chalk necessarily. But I think you're going to have them if they make it to the Super Bowl, which I think they're going to.
Balky and I spoke about it earlier. Tyreek Hill, I don't think is a good matchup against the Bills, and
No.
we know it's one and done. Is it uniformly? Is that the most talented player, most prolific player that you can see everyone avoiding? And could you
Yes.
possibly then be a contrarian?
I'm
I don't think there's any
completely
upside
fading
in it.
maybe if the quarterback wasn't Skylar Thompson, possibly
Yeah,
if
I'm
it
with
was
you.
Tua. But
Yeah.
I'm totally fading Miami. I'm totally fading Seattle. I just don't see a path for either of them winning, as opposed to I see a path for either any of the other matchups basically possibly going one way or another. So
Yeah.
Dan, one of the players you had in your squad from last year who was huge, got to the NFC Championship game, was Deebo Samuel. He is among a plethora of options in San Francisco that you could go with in this challenge. George Kittle in a tight end premium format. Christian McCaffrey, who was the number 1 overall pick in some fantasy leagues this year, and obviously has been playing awesome since he joined the 49ers. Brandon Ayuk, Brock Purdy, also possibilities there. But I want to talk specifically about Samuel. Is he the right Niner to own again this year? Or is the pivot off of him going to somebody else? Is that the smart play for the challenge?
yeah, he's not for me because of the injury. I mean, it's just too much unknown. He hasn't played in 6 weeks. You haven't seen it. Brock Purdy doesn't have really a good chemistry with him, I don't think yet. He was more Ayuk even when they both played.
Yeah.
So no, I'm fading Debo. I don't really think he'll be that popular, to be honest. I think you're going to see probably, I don't know percentage wise, but I would guess probably somewhere in the 60 to 70% McCaffrey range, and then being that it's tight end premium, a lot of Kittle and sprinkling of Ayuk. But I bet Debo's going to be a decent contrarian play. He's not for me. He hasn't stepped on the field. I know last year was great for me, but that was last year. I don't see that happening. I'm debating between McCaffrey and Kittle. Honestly, it's a tough call. I think San Francisco probably gets to the NFC Championship, but just depends on the matchups. I mean, I have Tampa winning. Like I said, I could see Tampa beating them. So,
Well, in honor of last week's guest, Mr. Alex K of New York City, and the Dizzle, I would say when you're having a tough consideration to find your place, Balky, we're still got 10% of the team still available. So if you're having tough, buy another team. That's what
I most likely will tomorrow.
That would be the move. That would be the move that I would make, especially if I'd had the kind of success you had last year. And you shared with us, and we talked about Mixon. You did not go to the chalk with Chase in Cincinnati. So let's focus on Cincinnati. I'm in Louisville, Kentucky. Everyone, not everyone, but a great deal of our people here are Cincinnati Bengals fans. And there's a lot of hope that the team will find itself back in the Super Bowl. Our good friend, Balky Craig Campbell last year had a major win when, just like Mr. Setlock, he avoided Chase and took T. Higgins. And when T. Higgins made that wonderful touchdown, there was a path for Craig to win significant money. So Cincinnati this year, let's focus on Cincinnati this year. What are you doing? And when you want to talk about quarterback, and here's a potential Super Bowl quarterback, and it's not Allen, it's not Mahomes, and how smart would you be to forget about the position players and just focus on quarterback here?
Yeah, I mean, Cincinnati's great. I mean, I love Burrow. I think I could easily see taking Burrow, but for me, obviously the second round matchup is almost guaranteed to be Cincinnati at Buffalo. I mean, assuming they both win. And I like Buffalo in that game. Not to mention, I just think that Ravens D is going to come to play. I think it's going to be a tough sledding for Mixon. And I think they get by that game, but it's not going to be as easy as people think. I think it's going to be more of a grinded out kind of game. And then assuming they both get by and then it's in Buffalo, once again, I don't think it's going to be a Mixon type game. I think it's going to be a shootout. I have Buffalo winning, so I'm considering Higgins in that matchup, but ultimately it's got to be Chase. He's just got too much upside. If you're going to ask me who's going to have more points, Chase or Higgins, I'm going Chase. I mean,
it's a Chase year, huh?
It's a Chase year, yeah. Even if it's chalky, I mean, ultimately, is he going to score more than Mixon and Higgins? I think he is. I mean, if they don't win that game, I'm not winning the contest. They're going to Bills are going to be out. I'm going to lose my quarterback. People are going to have Burrow. So once again, it comes back to kind of picking who you think is going to advance, and I'm taking Allen.
No, you touched on Jacksonville. I think the three of us are all in agreement here that Jacksonville wins this game. Are we not, Farrell?
Oh, I am.
Well, I think we are, but I love the way you guys have jumped on my bandwagon, and
I saw room on it. Why wouldn't I jump on it?
There is room here for you. The Duval counties have spoken.
There's a lot of out-coached, much better coach.
Yes.
I am not a believer in Brandon Staley. I think he definitely, like you mentioned earlier, botched that up and just lost their second best receiver for zero reason. I just don't get it.
I don't live in fear. Somebody says, well, you got to bench your game. It's not out of fear. It's out of balance. And there's always an advantage to look at some of the guys that you want to give a chance to play. I would be curious what Josh Kelly could do with 20 carries just to see, it's how to run a football team, but I digress, Balky.
It could be a good game, though. I mean, I don't think the Chargers don't have a chance. I mean, it's definitely
all of these games should be good games.
Yeah, but Jacksonville kind of showed you what they can do on the last game when they needed to win at Tennessee. It wasn't the prettiest, but I think they can play that kind of similar game with them. The Chargers haven't. I mean, it's Herbert's first game, playoff game on the road. I like Jacksonville. It's going to be live there.
Are you able to get off Austin Eckler and go to a different Charger in the challenge, or is Eckler does he just represent too high of a standard? Farrell said before you could get 2 games out of Eckler in one game.
He's the easy play for me. I mean, I have him playing one game, and I have him having a pretty solid game. So if I have him only playing one game, who's gonna be better, him or? I mean, Keenan Allen's going to be close just because of Mike Williams out. He's probably going to get a lot of volume. I feel like they're both going to be very similar at the end of the day. But, I probably have Eckler slightly higher. And if they only play one game and you got, say it's 60-40 ownership, I mean, why would you don't want Keenan Allen, right? If if Eckler outscores them by 5 points and they play one game, you got 5 points up on the Chargers.
In the KFFC, we're drafting next year on Super Bowl weekend, and we are waiting, by the way, from a commitment from our host, Eric Balkman, a wonderful co-host here. A matter of fact, he's already Dan. He's already counted about being here. He and his running buddy Erickson, and the crew that is, Team Appleton is already coming. Matter of fact, if he doesn't show his teams next year, one team name will be No Show Jones. But he is really, and he has a trophy that from our springtime leagues that he was successfully.
Nice.
This one right here, yeah,
nice trophy, and he earned it in 2020. In 2022 and 2023 Super Bowl, we expect him in the room with us. And Dan, you are invited too, especially now since we learned you have every Saturday off.
Yeah,
but I learned a long time ago that if you ask a question and you're not particularly pleased with the answer that you got, you come back to the same person and you ask a different question seeking the same information. So for all of us that have struggled in this format, and for those perhaps who may never have played in this format, what kind of advice could you possibly give us beyond what you have already so kindly shared here? I can tell you are a knowledgeable cat in regards to fantasy football. I used to get to ask during the regular year, I get to ask for sleepers and bust. I guess I don't want that. But what I really want is a reflection of your experience and just what you haven't perhaps covered that we could all glean some type of hope from, and call it the Setlock method when we get to City.
Yeah, kind of, just like what I said earlier. I mean, you really just need to map out your path. You need to map out who you think is going to be in the Super Bowl. You need to keep those key players in mind. You need to not tinker too much with your lineups. I mean, people love to tinker. I have friends that literally – I don't do a lot of daily, to be honest with you, but my friends do a ton of daily. And I'm like, who do you have? He's like, I don't know. I switched it 37 times. He's like, I had that guy in my line. He would have won $1 million like 20 times, but
Yes.
he flipped them out. So you can't do that. You just got to set your lineup. Like I said, if you want to switch out McCaffrey for Kittle at the last minute because you just, that's one little thing, but you just can't be switching your quarterbacks and your running backs around. And this format is set up to be just, who do you think's going to get to this deep run, fade the teams that are not going to win. That's, like, I don't think there's any major fades that I have, honestly. I mean, it's, like I said, I don't like Dallas at all. I think a lot of people are going to have at least some flex from either Pollard or Lamb or anything like that. So I'm hoping they go out in the first round and I'm going to have their defense. They could easily have some sacks and fumbles, but ultimately you want your defense and your kicker to be out in the first round as well, So I think, Tucker's probably going to be the highest owned player in this whole contest, I'm guessing.
He very well might be.
Yeah, he's going to be nice. So I have that too, but yeah, it's just stick to your guns. I mean, trust in your process and your, setting your team. I mean, but it is good to have multiple teams. I mean, I usually run 1 or 2 teams. I mean, you are competing against a lot of people, but it's not like you're playing DraftKings where it's, 1 million people in it.
Who would want to do that?
No, it's very doable. I mean, there's 7,000 people. It's not that crazy to take this down, honestly.
So Dan, I want to piggyback on something I had asked you about that the Chargers Jaguars game. I submitted a lineup for. I mean, obviously I can't play in the contest, but when I was on my Better Sports Network show last night, I did a lineup and I wanted to differentiate with the lineup that I'm going to bring with Farrell here in the next 5 or 10 minutes. I wanted to differentiate as much as possible from it. But the question I still went back and forth on with both the team from last night and tonight is, as far as the Jaguars go, is it Travis Etienne or is it Evan Engram? And I honestly don't know. With a tight end premium format like this, I don't know which way I wanted to go on this. I went back and forth on it. How do you look at the Jaguars?
That's probably the best pivot, honestly. I'm probably rolling ETN, but he's probably the second guy you want with the tight end premium. I mean, I love the tight end premium. I actually tried to get that passed in my league, and enough people didn't want to do it, but it's hard not to get off that once you're in the league. I've been doing this for long enough. I love and it just makes them so much more valuable. But I think Ingram is the pivot off of ETN. I do have him winning. So I do have, Ingram's been a little bit hit or miss. They can, as Lawrence spreads it around. I mean, they got Zay Jones, they got Christian Kirk, they got, so it is hard to pinpoint targets on that team. Kind of, he has had his games obviously, but ultimately I think ETN is gonna get it done for him.
Our friend John Erickson, Balky, checked in with a quote that I think will live. I will only tight end premium with a premium tight end. So that's what I have to say.
Yeah.
Thank you, Don, for coming in with that, because I think
that's a good quote.
Okay.
The other thing, guys, just real quick on not that I want to turn this into the Travis Etienne show, but I think something that's important to realize, and I didn't realize this till just now, but Etienne has a pretty good matchup here against the Chargers. It's not been great at stopping the run this year. What did he do in week 18? 7 carries for 17 yards. But keep in mind, and I guess I forgot about this, Titans had the second-ranked rush defense in the NFL. And I wonder how, if I'm believing, I can't play ETN. Look what he did this last game, 7 for 17. If I'm thinking that, right, how many other people are thinking that as well?
Maybe he is the contrarian play, right?
Maybe he's the contrarian play, right? Yeah. Especially with the season that Engram had. Maybe ETN is the guy you want here in this competition. So I think that's another point. Yeah, that bears mentioning today, right, Farrell?
I don't think he's going to be. I don't think he's going to be chalky. Honestly, like you said, I think if people are going to be fading Jacksonville, they're underdogs. I think a lot of people are going to be playing the defense, honestly, in this game, and you're going to see a little bit of Kirk, a little bit of Ingram. But he may be the most owned player on the team, but it's not going to be super high. I don't think.
And it's with great hesitancy that I sided with Jacksonville in this game because I think, Dan, you solidified it for me. It's coaching, much better coaching on the other side of the field. And, we got 2 long-haired quarterbacks competing with each other. So, that ought to come together pretty good. But I think somebody might be tempted. Every show has had a theme here in December about Evan Engram. And I think a lot of people might be tempted to say, okay, Jacksonville is going to advance, and The Chargers defensively are middle of the pack against the tight end. They don't threaten the tight end, and I would say that's probably a fugazi statistic because I think it's affected by that they have to play Kelsey twice a year. Kelsey was quiet in the second game.
Yeah.
In the first game against the Chargers, that was his 3 touchdown multiple catch game. So it's hard to find a lot of tight ends that have put up huge numbers against the Chargers. I don't see Ingram doing it.
Farrell, I'm going to throw it to you for the final question of the night as we grill Dan Setlock on his FFPC playoff challenge roster.
I'm going to ask that same question for the third time because I'm still seeking. But I'm going to ask it directly. And Balky's talking about the contrarian player, so I want you to officially give us yours. And then the heavily owned player, and we talked about some, but the heavily owned player that you are to stay away from. So the contrarian and the heavily owned that you stay away from.
Who's my contrarian player? I like it.
You can't use one you've already used, so you've got to dig deep.
My contrarian player, I'm probably going to use. It's probably, like I said, it's probably the Cowboys defense.
You've already said that. That is not allowed. That is not allowed.
Right.
That has been previously disclosed earlier in the show.
All right.
We need another contrarian.
Who else am I? Mike Evans. Is Mike Evans going to be highly owned? I don't know.
I don't think so.
There's so many options on that Buccaneers team. It's hard for me to say any of them are going to be highly owned, right?
Yeah.
I mean, Evans and Godwin and Brady and the 2 running backs.
Then you've got them winning, and which is even better.
I got him winning. I think Evans could be huge in the playoffs. I do. And fading. I don't know who am I fading.
You said you didn't have a whole lot of fades besides the Cowboys, right? I mean, that was basically your.
No, I mean, I'm fading the Cowboys just because I got them at the defense. I'm fading.
That's been previously spoken about in the show as well. So
yeah,
we need fresh material here. We're at the 46 minute.
It's hard to say who I'm fading. I mean, I'm fading Patrick Mahomes. I'm fading Jalen Hurts.
Jalen Hurts. We haven't said Jalen Hurts.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's a good one.
I think you're going to get a lot of Hurts on the Eagles. You're going to get a lot of Hurts backers. You're going to get a lot of AJ Brown. I think I'm pivoting probably to Devonta Smith. I don't think they go super deep. I think he's been trending upwards. I think AJ Brown's more of a boomer bust.
Yep.
If they go deep, will probably be great. I can honestly see them losing the first game. I'm not sure who they're going to play. But I don't feel good about Philly. I think I'm going with Devonta Smith in that one.
We don't really know.
Right. Can we get an official Super Bowl prediction from you, Dan, as we look at, the Super Bowl is roughly a month away from today. Can we get a Super Bowl prediction? Who beats who in that game in Glendale, Arizona?
I think the Bills finally get their Super Bowl, defeating Tom Brady and the Buccaneers.
Wow. Bills, Bucks. Think of the storylines. That would be a lot of fun. That'd be a lot of fun. This was a lot of fun hanging out with you tonight.
Yeah, thanks,
talking
guys.
shop
Thanks
and trying to figure out. I think you gave us a lot to think about. Obviously, to all the viewers that are scrambling, putting together their FFPC playoff challenge lineups, I think you gave them a lot to think about. I think you helped them as well. But we certainly appreciate picking your brain tonight. Congratulations on not only the 10th place finish in the challenge last year, but you won a boatload of best ball leagues this year. I know you're a football guys champ, main event, everything.
It was a rough year. It was a rough year, to be honest. This was probably
my
worst year. Oh man.
Well, then I would love to be you, man, because it
was an upside down. Well, especially in my home leagues. I feel like the worst players in every league I was in won the leagues. It was crazy. It was one of those.
You're a guest on this show and you didn't win your home leagues?
No.
What in the world is happening?
It's a 20-man league, though. It's a 20-man league. We got 2 separate 10-man drafts.
So and then let's have a big 2023 and work our way up to RotoViz. We can get there.
Yeah,
you need one someday.
Listen, Dan, enjoy the playoffs this weekend. Enjoy the playoffs over the next month or so of action. We really appreciate you carving out some time on this Friday night.
Sign up.
Thank you.
Everyone.
There's your ringing endorsement, Dan Setlock,
sir.
10th place finisher last year. Thanks, Dan. Appreciate it.
Bye.
Dan Setlock, ladies and gentlemen, the 10th place finisher. And yeah, absolutely. 10th place finisher in the FFPC World Famous Playoff Challenge last year.
There's another guy I really like. He's our only guy in the comment room tonight, old Hudson Kern Reed.
He is the man.
Say hello to him at all.
We should have. Anytime our resident Ivy League professor is hanging out here, we should be making mention of him.
He wasn't here last week, and I'd like to know where in the hell he was. And then
probably grading papers. That'd be my guess.
They grade on a curve now. I'm curious as to when we're going to have him on the show.
Well, okay, so he's been on before as a guest, but I have tried, and here's the thing, I've tried to get him on for years, and he always told me I'm not coming on until I win something of note. And then he ended up winning Pros versus Joes.
Well, what the hell is this? This was
yeah. And he still hasn't gotten it. Come on.
He's
third overall Kentucky main event. Yes. We will virtually award that trophy to him shortly. Yes, academic guest hosting.
What does that even mean?
That's what he would be. That he'd be our academic guest host. That's what we want.
See. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So good stuff from Dan Setlock there. Now, had I picked his brain prior to me putting this challenge roster together, I might have made a few changes. But I put one together tonight, Farrell, and I would love to get your opinion on it. Because it's radically different than the one I put together last night that Todd Burrows picked apart. Actually, Todd Burrows and I were very close in ours. We had a lot of similarities. I don't know how you'll feel about this, but I'm going to go through it right now. So my quarterback is, I'm projecting in this a Buffalo-Philadelphia Super Bowl where you get double points in the Super Bowl or the Pro Football Championship, excuse me. Josh Allen is my quarterback. At running back, I have three running backs here. Joe Mixon, from Cincinnati, Miles Sanders from Philly, again, pivoting off of Hurts and Brown and Devontae Smith, and I have Austin Eckler, who I just can't quit. So those are my three running backs. Now, I did go heavy receiver here. Deebo Samuel is my Niner. Instead of going Mike Evans, I went with Chris Godwin as my Buccaneer. Again, a little bit of a pivot there. Justin Jefferson and CeeDee Lamb. So I have four receivers there, Samuel, Godwin, Jefferson and Lamb. And then I went with two tight ends, I think, on this roster. Yeah, two tight ends. Travis Kelce will be my Kansas City Chief. And then Evan Ingram I chose as my Jacksonville Jaguar. What Dan Setlock thinks is going to be the most heavily owned player in the competition, I have here to prove his point. Justin Tucker is my kicker. And then I went with the Giants defense because I do think there's going to be a ton of Barkley here. I need a defense. I probably, if I had the opportunity to change it, I'd probably move off it right now because that is the highest total of any game this weekend. And the Giants going on the road to Minnesota. I think that's a projected point total for Minnesota, like 25 or 26 points, something like that. And 48.5 is the total for the game. So if I had to change something, it would probably look that way. But as I rifle through the roster again, Allen at quarterback, Mixon, Sanders, Austin Eckler in the backfield, Deebo Samuel, Godwin, CeeDee Lamb, Justin Jefferson, Travis Ingram, Tucker, and the Giants. Your initial thoughts and what you think I should do differently if I was submitting this lineup, which I'm not.
Well, okay. So can we go about this like we are partners on this?
Sure. Absolutely.
When we approach it that way, Josh Allen, yes, that is your Buffalo Bill because they have so many tools that any of those players at the other positions could emerge and have big games throughout. But no matter who has a big game, Allen will. So I like this. And plus, he's the favorite from the AFC. Well, one of them to get in. Okay, Mixon, a great run last year and an opportunity this week to have extra carries and to lock that game away late against Baltimore. I like that. Let's come back to Miles Sanders. I'm going to find the thing that I at least like about this team. Oh, well, I don't have to go any further than Evan Ingram. Gosh, we just keep hammering on Evan Ingram. Okay, we're going to take Evan Ingram out because we have a kicker and a defense. And a very, very close game could develop against the Chargers in round one. So I really think we're going to go with the Jacksonville kicker. His name is Wright. It is. It doesn't matter. But the Jacksonville kicker.
No, isn't it Riley Patterson?
Riley Patterson. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, Patterson it is. We'll move him into the kicker because that's a game that could be decided, at least the Las Vegas thinks it'll be decided by 3 points. Okay. We're going to move Ingram out of the game. And what I would like to move into the flex position, you have the Giants' defense. Excuse me. We're going to move Baltimore down to the defensive spot, getting rid of your kicker Tucker.
Okay.
And we're going to take Ingram out, and I'm going to talk to you, and I'm going to try to convince you for my new favorite New York Giant, number 18. I think it's Isaiah Hodgins.
Hodgins.
Hodgins. I would like
Yeah.
to play Hodgins. Over the last 5 games, Balky, 25 catches, 4 of them touchdowns, and he's opposing Jefferson, which is my favorite pick of what you've done here with this team. I would like to have the winner of that game. I would like to move forward with a receiver on the winning team from that game. So Jefferson and then Isaiah Hodgins, and one of them will advance, and I like that. And I apologize for coughing. I haven't coughed all day until the show started. Godwin, I think that could be switched out, in tip of the cap to Mr. Setlock. I think we could switch that out. I think we could take down Miles Sanders and install Playoff Lenny. It's in the name there, Balky, Playoff Lenny. And we could also consider, if you don't want Lenny and if you really want to roll with Miles Sanders, we could put in one of the Philadelphia receivers, or we could consider Evans. And I'll say this, that Chris Godwin is my favorite player, but we talked earlier in the show about players that have just been beaten up this year. He started the year beat up, and he hasn't. And will he, starting in the wild card round, will he be still a force? Well, when we get to the when we get to the Super Bowl, and will he be able to physically stay together and contribute in every game? That would be my thought there. Austin Eckler is in the lineup. CeeDee Lamb, I think no matter what in this game, he's going to get his targets and his touches. I'm down on the Cowboys advancing in this game, but I think if you've got to go a Cowboy, he's your best Cowboy. So that's what I think about this lineup. Everything else that's in there, Balky, very, 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 very solid. I never know which running back is going to appear in Philadelphia. Miles Sanders certainly answered the bell this year. I might like Fournette better. I go look at Sanders' stats, though, and, it's hard to get off of him. But you put together a very good team here. You got to get him out of there.
Okay, so let me ask you this. So I'm going to agree with you. We'll put in Fournette, right? So we'll take out Sanders. And are we taking out Godwin for Fournette?
Yeah, you're taking out Godwin for Fournette, and you're taking Sanders down, and you're going to employ one of those Philadelphia receivers. And, Mr. Setlock talked about Smith versus A.J. Brown. And yes, A.J. Brown is that home run wide receiver, but when he hits that home run, and he's going to have multiple chances to do it, you would like to get those points. So, you've got consistent performers at every other position, and then especially with Deebo Samuel as a consistent player. So I think that I might want to roll the dice on A.J. Brown being able to put together a string of big games.
I had Devontae Smith in there in my roster last night, but man, A.J. Brown is a man. Not that Smith isn't. He was a Heisman. But I think, yeah, okay. So the adjustments we made here are Tucker's out, the Ravens defense is in. The Giants defense is out. Isaiah Hodgins is in. That's the contrarian play out of all this. Riley Patterson is in at kicker. Evan Engram is out, and we're putting in Leonard Fournette for Godwin, and we're subbing out Miles Sanders for A.J. Brown. Farrell, much like everything that you do, I think you just made this team better. So
God bless you, brother.
I am with you on this. So I think this makes a lot of sense. So now the final roster we have here, the bulky Farrell experience here, Josh Allen at quarterback. The running backs are Joe Mixon, Leonard Fournette, and Austin Eckler. The receivers are Deebo Samuel, A.J. Brown, Justin Jefferson, CeeDee Lamb. Tight ends, we're looking at just Travis Kelce. Kicker will be Riley Patterson. I missed Isaiah Hodgins at receiver as well. Kicker will be Riley Patterson. The defense will be the Baltimore Ravens. You're welcome, America. We just gave you $500,000. That's the pathway to do it. So congratulations to anybody watching this and putting in that lineup for $200. Farrell, this was once again favorite part of Friday night is always hanging out with you and another guest where you can pick their brain. I wish you nothing but an enjoyable weekend of football. 6 games we get over the course of the next 3 days. Always fun to chop it up with you, and we will do this again next Friday before the divisional round of the playoffs.
And I'll see you in 29 days at the KFFSC.
That's the plan,
Super
man.
Bowl party and draft.
Yes, it's going to be a rager. It's going to be a real rager. I look forward to it, Farrell. Thank you so much for hopping aboard. We'll talk with you again next week.
See you, Boggy.
Farrell Elliott, ladies and gentlemen, the definitive commissioner of fantasy football from the Kentucky Fantasy Football State Championship. Check out his contest at kffsc.com. Always fun. Been playing in it for, 20 years now, almost 20 years for me. And I wish it would have been the whole time that he's had it in his existence because it is always so much fun. I want to thank Dan Setlock. I want to thank Farrell Elliott, the FFPC, Rob Bryce, and of course, each and every one of you. We are live next Friday, again, as I just said, at 10/9 Central. We're going to have 2021-2022 Football Guys Playoff Challenge. 4th place finisher Justin Kuber will drop by. Kuber or Keeber, I meant to ask him that and I forgot, but Justin Kuber/Keeber will be on next week as our guest as we get you set for the divisional round of the playoffs. Again, in case you missed it, the RotoViz High Stakes Lowdown with 2022 FFPC main event 9th place finisher and 2021 FFPC main event 8th place finisher Rob Linkowski. Great stuff from him on season-long contests. Good advice from him on the playoff challenges as well. So make sure you're watching that at the FFPC YouTube channel, or you can download the audio or stream the audio at rotoviz.com/podcast. Speaking of the RotoViz High Stakes Lowdown, it returns on Tuesday at 10/9 Central. The 2021-2022 5th place finisher and former overall champ in the world famous FFPC Playoff Challenge, Taz Badawala, will be joining me on that program. We're going to chop it up, get you set for the divisional challenge for the FFPC. We're going to find out how his teams are doing after the wild card round of the playoffs as well. So that's going to be fun. And of course, don't miss the High Stakes Fantasy Football Show on the Better Sports Network. We were live this past Thursday with Todd Burrows from the Run to Daylight podcast and the Sharp Football Analysis Sharper Angles podcast. We were live with him on Thursday night. This coming Thursday night at 7/6 Central on the Better Sports Network app, which you can download free in the App Store and Google Play. You can watch Ben Gretsch from RotoViz, Stealing Bananas podcast. He will be on with me co-hosting for 2 full hours on Thursday night. Final reminder, play for $500,000 right now in the world-famous FFPC Playoff Challenge. You get a ton of content, ton of advice from a guy who finished 10th overall last year, obviously from me and Farrell as well. We brought that content to you tonight. You can check out all the other content from Football Guys, Draft Sharks, Fantasy Alarm, Fantasy Points, the GOAT District. Everybody is churning out great content on this, on how to win. And it only costs $200 to join. I mean, I always say this, can you afford not to play in this contest to try to win life-changing money? $500,000 will be awarded in mid-February, and that could be you if you enter it right now. Don't forget $100,000 grand prize in the Football Guys Playoff Challenge. I would hustle to get into both of these. Both of them are pacing ahead of where we were at last year in the time that we've been on the air tonight. I think in the Football Guys Playoff Challenge, it looks like 200 some teams right around there. If I'm seeing this correctly, I think 200 teams got sold while we've been broadcasting tonight, and there's only a little under 1,200 left there. And then in the FFPC Playoff Challenge, we're looking at about, I want to say about 100 teams or so, a little under 100 teams sold in the last hour there, only 1,850 spots left. So they're going to go fast tomorrow. They always do. So make sure you are, what does Farrell always say? Don't be a wish I had. Sign up now, get your teams registered, and then you can mess with them before lineups lock at 4:30 Eastern time tomorrow when the Seahawks and Niners kick off. Remember to like the video, subscribe to the channel, comment on the video, and share it with all your friends, and get notified by clicking on that notification bell so you always make sure you're notified when the FFPC YouTube channel goes live with more great content thanks to the players that are coming on this broadcast. Your NFL Super Wildcard Weekend officially starts now.
This has been another episode of the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour presented by myffpc.com. It was broadcast live and was watched around the world Balky and Farrell will be back next week with more analysis, more interviews, and more advice from guests much smarter than they are. Thanks for watching, and we'll talk with you again next week.
You know, I realized I didn't do like a post announcement, like a post credit scene on the show last week, and I apologize for that. But I'm going to do one this week, and it's regarding something that we didn't actually get to on the show. But according to Tom Pelissero on Twitter, that if there is going to be a neutral site for the AFC Championship game, it will be between the Chiefs and Bills. It will be played at Atlanta. That's where the two teams would meet to be on a neutral site. Pelissero said that the stadium is basically equidistant from both Kansas City and Buffalo, and the game would be played January 29th at 6:30 Eastern time. That's if those two teams meet. That's where it'll be played. Now, there was some scuttlebutt about Lambeau Field perhaps hosting the AFC Championship game. And my buddy and I were talking, and we were at the Packers game on Sunday, the debacle. And congratulations to the Lions, because one team showed up for that game. It definitely wasn't Green Bay. But we were at the game at Lambeau Field, and we basically said, look, if there's going to be an AFC Championship, we're going to go to Lambeau Field to watch it, because that way we can watch a championship game at Lambeau Field, and we're guaranteed the Packers not to lose. It won't happen, but it might happen in Atlanta. Thanks for watching, everybody. MyFFPC.com is where to sign up for your FFPC World Famous Playoff Challenge teams. Good luck and enjoy the games this week.